And we are rolling on part 2 of the impromptu topics for March 8th here at UCLA in Los Angeles, where it's a beautiful sunny day. And we're about to hear he tell us about the following quote and give an impromptu topic on the question, the only way to predict the future is to have the power to shape the future, by Eric, a longshoreman, Hoffer.
Hello everyone.
Hello.
I want to start off my speech by giving one of my favorite quotes from my favorite movie, Kung Fu Panda. The saying goes, yesterday is history. The future is a mystery, but today is a gift, and that's why it is called present. And as corny as this may be coming from an animation, this really made me think about what time is, what we can do with time. And I think present is a perfect situation for us to make change and to make a profound impact on our lives. And I think present is the only time where we can actually shape our own selves as well as the people around us. And I think only through those actions can we make a change for the future. Today I'll be talking about the quote, the only way to predict the future is to have the power to shape the future. And I definitely agree with this quotation, and I'm going to be providing 3 personal stories that I have heard that exemplifies why we need to be able to predict the future to shape the future. I think time is a significant part of everyone. And I think it's so unique because it is man-made. When someone is given 4 hours to do an assignment the day before it is due, I can utilize it and make the best paper it can be, or someone else can be writing 2 paragraphs and be failing. Same thing applies for the current situation that we are in. We're in college. Some of our peers are getting the best offers from the best companies around the world, while some people are just getting ready to graduate and taking that final upper division course. I think that's the difference of why time is so significant, because time can be utilized by different people in different ways. And I think my 3 examples will exemplify why people choose different methods to achieve different future. My first example comes from the story that we all watched together, which was when we watched a speech from Steve Jobs at the Stanford graduation. I think one of the most profound impact that Steve Jobs had during that speech, at least towards me, was his explanation of how he shaped his future at one of the lowest time of his life. I quote, he states, "The heaviness of success outweighed the lightness of a beginner." And that really resonated in my mind because he was able to create this huge company and create this software called Macintosh, but was voted out of his country by the age of 30 by someone who he hired. But he used the hardships when he got out of the company to re-recognize who he is as a person and start over as a beginner, and he succeeded to build the next big company next, and went on to build Pixar Pictures and went on to create Toy Stories that we all know. I think this exemplifies this quotation perfectly because rather than struggling with the present, he treated it as a gift and tried to predict his own future by making the power to shape his own future. I think Steve Jobs really did a good job to actually utilize the situations to move on and create the next big thing. The second example that I'm going to provide is my own personal example. I think this is something that all of us can really share as a college student. I think we've all been in a situation where we failed that midterm or we failed that week 5 essay that's worth 40% of our grade. And I think that is, maybe not, I don't know, at least I did. I see someone shaking their head, but I think for me, at first when I came to college, it was such a big transition. And at first it was such a big letdown that I let that get to me all the way to finals week. However, in order to predict and change my future, I need to have the power to change it. And I think that comes with recognition that I have failed. And I think through the recognition that I have failed, I was able to shape the future by studying harder, by changing my study habits, or going to extra office hours, or talking to my professor. I think many college students exemplify this quotation through the change in methods that people utilize when they have failed, especially in a school like UCLA, where we do need to go the extra step to get individual attention. And lastly, the third quotation that I'm going to use, the third example that I'm going to be using is a personal story of my mother. I think for my mother, approximately 6 years ago, she was at the risk of having diabetes, and her doctors really alarmed her that it's something serious and she needed to really change her lifestyle. And at the moment, she was going through a lot with her parents being sick, as well as work being strenuous for herself. She was going through a lot of weight problem, as well as emotional distress because of the situation that she was currently in. Seeing her from someone right next to her, one of the closest person that she has, it was a difficult time for both her and I. However, it was very amazing to see that she really wanted to change the situation and the way she reacted to the situation. And I think it really exemplifies the quotation as well, because she really wanted to change her lifestyles and predict her future. And she really believed the only way to do that was to change the present situation that she was in. She began working out, she began to have more connections with the family members. And I think that is the number one step into making any concrete change. I think having the power to shape the current situation and the future is the only way to actually make a concrete change in the future. In summary, I've given you 3 examples of how the power to shape the future is a good indication to actually make concrete change. First, I gave the story of Steve Jobs and the struggle who comes from someone who was already successful and made concrete change by shaping the future. Second was my own personal story of how, as college students, we may fail in the middle, but we must get back up and have the power to change the future in order to make any concrete change. And lastly is my mother's personal overcoming of her current situations in order to shape the future. In conclusion, I think time can be a very relative thing. Even though we are all given the same equal amount of time, what we do with it and what kind of changes we make with it differs from person to person. And I think in terms of this quotation, I think the ability to have the power to shape the future is also relative. If we really as individuals feel the desire to change or want to make impact to the future, I think they need to treat the current situation or the present as a gift and be able to influence the future in order to make concrete change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael.
Hi, Michael.
I thought the examples you gave were really, really good, especially Steve Jobs, because pretty much I think, if I remember it correctly, I haven't watched it since that original lecture where we watched it. It was pretty much exactly what Steve Jobs said from what I remember. And second, your third example was the personal, I guess the emotional appeal you had by giving your own personal story. I think that was effective. So I think you kind of got all of our attention when you talk about Steve Jobs, because it's something we can all relate to. And also your emotional appeal. I'm sure a lot of us know someone who's diabetic. If not, I mean, it's still a personal one, and people are naturally interested to hear about what your personal stories. I think both the first and the third example were really effective.
Thank you. Improvement?
Hi everyone, my name's Tommy.
Hi, Tommy.
So the only improvement I can think of is when you made the assumption that maybe some people have failed the midterm or whatever. You went back on it. I think you should have just stayed on it, because when you went back on it, you kind of lost credibility. But other than that, I think
Yeah. Because everyone's sinned and come short of the glory of God. You know, everyone's failed something sometime in their lives, so just go with it. Okay. Yeah, you chose an interesting way to interpret the resolution. You didn't tell us who Eric Hoffer was. Did you look him up or find out who he was?
No, I didn't know.
That would be useful. I mentioned that would be a useful thing to do to give this sort of context. He was a philosopher that started as a longshoreman working on the docks. He wrote a very famous book called Escape from Freedom. It's been a bestseller. It's really a fairly famous sociological text. So what you interestingly did was chose to define the word predict in a unique way, not so much to mean predict in the idea of being clairvoyant and knowing your future, but the idea of being able to, you define it as change your future, right? You define prediction as change. And that was fine. That was an acceptable way to interpret this resolution. I would have liked to have had a more overt preview from you of what you were going to do. I'm going to give 3 examples. Steve Jobs, a personal story, and a story about my mother. Okay? Just small thing. 6th statement was fine. Love the Steve Jobs. Love the way you integrated something that happened in class, an illusion that everyone could relate to, that everyone saw, and worked it in nicely to the quote. And you get hit in the head with a brick. What are you going to do? You get up and keep walking. And so it was good. It was good use of an example that everyone perked up for. I think it made the speech sticky. On the failed midterm, you backed out a little, but you did talk about how you made some personal changes and turned the future around and took the power to shape the future by having that realization. On the 3rd one, your mother's diabetes, that was a good emotion. You're steepling. Your mother's story of diabetes or near diabetes and exercise and that sort of thing, and that was good emotional connection with your audience, so you got that. I was curious, did you consciously design anything into this that you felt was real unexpected for attention management?
I thought for me the unexpected aspect was to kind of shed the light on how time can be relative to everyone. We kind of take time for granted as like something like that's equally the same, but the way we utilize it is so different. And the things we can do with time, in terms of like how many, for example, 4 hours, like what we can do, like what someone can do for 4 hours is different from what other people can do.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a really unexpected way to kind of define
conceptualize time. Pretty heavy, I guess. Okay. And your summary was good. Your conclusion was good. And I guess your tie back to what is time and that sort of thing was you're coming the first circle. So you did a pretty good job. You did it without notes. So nice job. Thank you. Okay. Is this a volunteer? While I'm here, is there anybody that on this list that has some interest in judging at Loyola this weekend? One person? Okay, that would be Jason. Okay, great. Where are you?
I think I'm round 3, speaker 7.
Speaker 7, yes you are. Okay.
Kind of unfortunate that we're going back to back. And kind of
Yeah, it is interesting.
still a lot of my best stuff. I just have to say it again.
Who's speaking? Arian? Arian Loyola. Great. So I'll get you the info, the invite and directions and where and when to report. Do you know where Loyola is?
Yeah, I grew up playing golf just across the street. It was just a golf course. So.
Yeah. You enter from Lincoln.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's hear you. Yes. Gosh, these are just all the same. Let's talk. Let's play with this one. Let's do number 2.
You know what? Totally.
If the present.
It's the most different from what you.
I know it is. That's why I chose it.
As soon as he said, I knew you were going to choose 2.
You ready to write?
Yeah.
If the present chewing gum.
Oh, is that forbidden?
Speaker, yeah, it's bad for speakers. You chew gum at moot court?
No, I don't do moot court either.
I meant,
Mock trial.
sorry, mock trial.
I have no
You
idea.
chew gum at mock trial?
No.
Okay, there you have it. If the present is really all we have, then the present lasts forever. Ooh. By Anne Lamott. Do 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 do. Well, you have a long last name.
Yeah, they didn't really give me a choice in the matter. Funny is, I'm the only one in the family that has the last name. Everybody shortened it to Gene.
What a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, can you take a step forward? Yeah, because
My grandfather did it to kind of avoid to kind of Americanize his Greek last name.
Yeah, that's a
and to
good
kind of
idea.
get at any maybe racial tensions along that, that was facing like, Greeks, Italians, whatever. But my dad actually gave me the name for the opposite reason, felt it would help me on on applications.
Oh, I see. Great.
I find that funny.
Okay, good. Well, so we're about to hear from Jason on the question. If the present is really all we have, then the present lasts forever. By Anne Lamott.
Hi everyone, my name is Jason.
Hi, Jason.
In 2007, in upstate New York. There was a group of teenage cheerleaders driving a car, happy, excited. They had just graduated from high school, had their whole lives ahead of them. And they're driving down, I think going back home after one of those celebrations when, wham, they slam into a semi-truck. All 5 of them were dead. In the investigation that followed, they discovered that the driver of the vehicle had probably sent a text message to a friend just seconds before impact. Obviously, it's a distracted driver. As we all know, in this state, things like that are a big deal. We have laws that talk about, it can wait. You shouldn't text and drive. You should have your attention on the task at hand. And the reason why I bring that story up is, and those laws up, is that what are they trying to tell us with those kinds of laws? That the present is important. That it's good to be in the moment. And I think that's what Anne Lamott is also trying to say. She was a writer and a progressive activist. And what she's saying, what she says, if the present is really all we have, then the present lasts forever. She's really trying to tell us that our whole lives, past, future, now, is all happening in this very moment. The moment that is happening right now. And that it will always be that way. And because of that, I think she's trying to direct our attention that we ought to focus more on being in the moment. I think this is significant for just about everybody, since we all face the same paradox of time. All of our moments are being created right this second. I think that from my own point of view, there are a few things that make me feel that Ms. Lamott's quote has great significance. And I'm going to share this with you today. First is my own experience transitioning to UCLA. Secondly is our time here in this class delivering speeches. And thirdly is what we're all doing at this university in the first place, which is building towards our futures outside the walls of this university. Firstly, to my first point, my experience transferring to UCLA. Unlike most of you, I'm 32 years old. I'm, come from I wouldn't say completely different generation, but there is a large gap there. I'm probably a decade older than all of you. And that reflects my having gone to a junior college previously and then dropping out because I felt it was too hard. I really struggled the first time around. I really didn't feel it was for me. I didn't feel like I would get to where I was going. And I quit. And from that point on, I had a number of jobs and ultimately fell into something that was my first love. I played competitive golf as a kid, and I wanted to give that to other children. I ended up starting work at a golf course and teaching kids golf as a professional golf instructor. And I enjoyed that for quite a while. I did that for 5 years. But at a certain point in time, I felt that it wasn't something that was significant enough. I needed to do something more. I listened to that voice in the moment, how I felt in that moment. And I looked back on what I had done and what I was looking to do, and I decided that I wanted to go back to school. And it was a tough road. I had thought about, the problems that I had previously, and I felt they were so insurmountable I needed to quit. But I didn't let that stop me. I stayed in the moment. It started with one class and 2 classes. One was online, another one was at the community college down the street, and it was just staying in the moment. Every test, every paper, every exam, every class. And this built and built and built, and my academic record built and built and built one step at a time, one moment at a time. And then I applied to colleges to transfer, and I got into my dream school, UCLA. And that moment, being in that moment was so beautiful. I was there with my girlfriend, you check and see online, did you get in or not. She was so happy for me when it happened. She ran all around the apartment and then locked herself in the bathroom because she was crying with tears of joy for my success. If I had focused on my past instead of staying in the moment, I would have never been able to achieve that. It would have been too insurmountable a task if I had focused on my past feelings instead of being in the moment so I can achieve something greater in the future. My second point in talking about being in the moment comes from this very class. Now, we do a lot of preparation work here, preparing for our speeches. But what's it all geared towards? It's geared towards when we step up in here, we don't freeze. When we get in front of the camera, we don't freeze. We're in the moment. All that research is so that you have it available in the moment. All the preparation, delivering your speech is so that you can remember where you're going. You can stay on point. You can stay on message. All of that is designed so that when we step in front of Professor Miller's camera, you don't have a brain freeze, or you don't forget your lines, so that you can be here in the moment as much as possible, so that you can be almost an autopilot. If we don't, if we're not here in the moment, we're never going to get past the possibility of embarrassment or the anxiety that we may face speaking in public. Those things become measurably harder when we're worried about future performances or past failings. We accomplish overcoming those things by staying in the moment. The last thing that I feel also where it's important for us to be in the moment is our whole experience here at UCLA. Yes, everything that we're doing now is preparing for a future that has not yet come. But we have to build those things one step at a time, just like when I did my work to get to UCLA, just like we do when we work on our speeches here in this class. It starts with every class you select, or a major that maybe you change into. It starts with, say, Michael, for instance, who I've detected from his Rubio speech and his going across the country to go help for that campaign. He's building one step at a time towards maybe a future in public service. Just like we're all building. I myself am building towards a future in public service law. That's what I want to do. And it all starts one thing at a time. It's not built in a day. Each one of us have tests and classes and all kinds of things that are building towards a future, but they mean nothing. They're not accomplished without us staying in the moment. For every exam, for every piece of homework, for every piece of research, for every thing that we hope to achieve here for the future, we have to be here in the moment. So, in summary, I hope that I've explained why I feel that Ms. Lamont is correct, that that all we have is the present, and that it lasts forever, because each our past, our present, our future, each of those things are happening one step at a time here in the moment. If the unfortunate high school graduates that had been in that car in 2007 had been more in the moment, if that driver had been more in the moment, instead of having to send that text message, letting it wait, it might be with us today, and I think it just shows that the value that for things big and small of being in the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. 8:22.
Hello, my name is Mohammed.
Hi, Mohammed.
I definitely enjoyed your speech, and I enjoyed how you started it with your story. And I think you had an emotional connection with the audience when you mentioned that story.
Mm-hmm. And another time too. Improvement? Okay, well, we'll come back to you. We'll give you a
Okay, I
chance.
was like, okay. I thought that your speech was really
Name?
Oh, hi, I'm Brenda.
Hey, Brenda.
Hi,
I thought
Brenda.
your speech was really good. You're definitely a very capable speaker. Again, it's like the time thing, and like you notice that by now. But I think that one like concrete thing I noticed is that to elaborate your examples, you like to give lists. So it's like, oh, like if she hadn't done this and this and this and this, and you do that for a lot of points. So maybe for like a future speech, you can like pick and choose which ones you want to really exaggerate more on, and then for other ones you can just keep it simple, keep it short and sweet, sweet and short. And so I think that's like the only concrete thing I can give you. But other than that, it was really good.
Thanks.
Good, yeah. Those are good suggestions for you. I think that, Jason, you want to you're wordy, and you have a tendency to elaborate on everything. And your intro was a little bit long, so it took you a while to get your intro and your preview, although it was an excellent grabbing intro about texting and the death and that sort of thing. Good preview. Liked your personal story about 32 years old and relating that to coming back into the now and relating that, working that through that way of, deciding that you were going to change, and that was excellent. Your second reason was good, and I liked the way you played it with the example for people in UCLA, and not, the people are often playing way far out instead of, we had another speech and we're working for your eulogy as opposed to your resume, and there's something now about working for your eulogy versus your resume, which is a very futuristic thing to be doing too. Two things that I would just send to you. The poet Emily Dickinson observed that many people think that they're someday going to heaven, and she said, I'm going to heaven every moment. And, it was sort of like, to her, just being alive and experiencing every moment was heaven, and it was a very interesting reconceptualization of the concept of heaven, not something that was way out in the future, but was in the now. There's also a really excellent book called Be Here Now. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. That has a whole series of exercises that people can use to get away from being in the past or being in the future, and working on being in the now. And those are often helpful. Besides just going way over time, you did an excellent job. You're very fluent. No notes, so thank you very much. Okay, next. Round two, what?
Speaker one.
Round three. Round two. Speaker one. Brenda. Speaker one. Yeah. Okay, let's do number 2. Teach us to give. And not to count the cost. By Saint Ignatius. And she stands before you, managing attention, communicating respect. Elsie's writing. Finding friendly eyes near the front and the center. Say your name. Feel the love. Start your speech.
Hi, I'm Brenda.
Hey, Brenda.
Hi, Brenda.
My brother is a member of the United States Navy. And every time he comes back from his deployment in Japan, he comes back and spoils his favorite little sister, and only little sister, me. And so one particular night we were going to a restaurant, and it was a really, really cold night. And there was a homeless man sitting outside asking for $1 for a cup of hot coffee. And my brother walked up to him and took a $50 bill out of his pocket and gave it to him. And in that moment, to me, that that exemplified what it meant to give without thinking about the cost. And Saint Ignatius, it was a knight and then a priest from the 15th century. And it's crazy that over 500 years ago, someone was already thinking this far forward about human kindness and human empathy. So today I'll give you 3 examples from the current day life about where we can learn to give and not count the cost. The first is from one of our favorite animated films, Lion King. The second is from a YouTube social experiment. And then the third is from Robin Williams. This is extremely important because as human beings, we should show kindness to one another, especially those that are less fortunate. We're living in the west side of Los Angeles. We go to one of the best schools in the world, and yet a lot of times we walk around and we don't show the same kind of kindness to other people. So with that in mind, I'll go on to my first example. My first example is from The Lion King, and a lot of us kind of know the story about the young cub Simba, who was abandoned because his uncle killed his father, and so he was left abandoned with no one to take care of him. He was taken under the wing of Timon and Pumbaa, a warthog and a meerkat, and this is already a very unlikely situation, but the fact that they were able to take a lion cub under their wing, and the fact that they were able to take a predator while they could have been the prey and take care of him, teaching him how to scavenge for food, teaching him how to, walk on his own and, really raise him to become the lion that he ended up becoming is amazing. And they never at one moment was like, oh, maybe, one day Simba could eat me. Obviously, they didn't think that. And I think that, just from an animated film made 20 years ago, we're able to learn so much about kindness. And I think that that is one big example of where two small animals can teach us to give and not count the cost. The second example of when someone would give and not count the cost is with the social experiment by YouTuber Jason Lin. And in this experiment, he basically gave $100 to a homeless man on the street. And he wanted to see what he ended up doing with that money, because there's a stigma that homeless people just use the money they give you to buy alcohol or drugs. So he followed him, and he saw him walking into a liquor store, and already you can make assumptions on what he was doing there. But it turns out he ended up buying bags and bags of chips and other snacks and walking to a local park to hand out to other homeless people who were residing at the park. And this is a man who has nothing. He's living on the streets. He's getting $100 that he could have done anything he wanted with, but instead he chose to use that money to give to other people. And at that point, $100 could have fed him for easily like a few weeks, but instead he decided to share that kindness with other people. And in a sense, for someone who had nothing, he really did give and not count the cost of what he did. And in a way, that's something that we should learn from people who actually have a lot of things, have a lot of nice things, and have money to spare. We should take this example and apply it to our own lives. The last example is from famous actor, the late Robin Williams. And as we all know from the news and pop culture, Robin Williams, he was a very decorated actor. He's been in Hollywood for a very, very long time, and he was very established at what he did, even though he was fighting his own internal battles. One of the most philanthropic things that he did was he did a tour of a lot of the United States bases in other countries, including Iraq, Afghanistan, a lot of places that were war-torn, and he went there and he would give his comedy skits and like stand-up comedy to the troops there. And he was very humble about it, and he did it in a way to boost the troops' morale, because these are the people who are going and fighting for our country. And he, who had a lot of better things to do, he could have been filming a movie, he could have been making more money doing what he did, but instead he decided to give his time and give that possible revenue to flying out to these troops and making sure that even in the darkest of times, they were able to find some humor and light in their lives. And for someone who is battling depression, who's eventually battling Parkinson's, I think that is an incredible amount to give for someone who was feeling so low on themselves. So if even a Hollywood actor can find a bit of his time to, you know, go out and help others, and I'm not saying that we all have to fly out to Afghanistan and give stand-up comedy, I feel that that's something that we can learn in ourselves to give and not count the cost. So overall, I've given you 3 reasons why St. Ignatius was completely right when he said that we should teach us to give and not count the cost. This is a quote that is extremely relevant anytime from the 1400s to the 2000s and will be applicable for future generations to come. I think that as people, and as people who are as privileged as we are, it's extremely important for us to learn to give and not count the cost. So just like how my brother, who was from the Navy, was able to take money out of his own pocket and give it to a homeless man on the street, we can find ways in our own lives to give back to other people as well.
Thank you. 6:11. Oh, we skipped you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Ising.
Amazing.
I really liked the story that you gave and the tiebacks you did. I think it was like a very emotional story to you personally because it was about your brother. But I think the really interesting thing about your speech was you gave 3 examples that kind of like showed 3 different like unique like situations like where they come from different backgrounds, just like your brother or like a homeless person or like a famous comedian who like goes out and say. So I think it's like really cool to see like people from different backgrounds doing the same thing, like the interpretation is trying to say.
I guess hair. Improvement.
Hi, I'm Brianna.
Hey, Brianna.
Hi, Brianna.
Overall, I think that was the best speech you've given this quarter. I loved your writing. Oh, really?
Yeah, I haven't done my second one yet.
Oh, well, it was a great speech. I think one thing you can improve on is to just slow down a little bit, because you had such a great range of variety in your examples. I think if you had just slowed down, it would have been a little bit more impactful, but that's it. It was really good.
Yeah, you had a minute 15 left, so you could have slowed down. Teach us to give and not to count the costs. Your brother's example was striking and impressive, and you tied back to that. That was good. You had an excellent preview. I was a little put off by The Lion King. I wasn't so sure how much they weren't counting the cost, but it was cute, it was good, it was okay. On your second story, though, was the YouTube story. That was an excellent story, one that many people may not know about, you know, and an example of somebody that has very little and gives it all away. You could say that he actually gives more than a millionaire that gives $10, gives $1,000, because he's hardly giving anything of his wealth away, is he? Right? Yeah. So it was a good story, and I like the story part of your presentations. On Robin Williams, yes, a tragic ending to him, and I thought you dealt with it in good taste with his depression. I didn't know it was Parkinson's or whatever it was. I don't know. Yeah, awful though. Awful way to go. Yes, and that was. I wish you had brought in a little bit more of the calculation that he was making of not counting the cost to his career or to the money he could have been making more films or something, and not counting the cost and linking back more to the resolution that you're being asked to prove, shall we say. Summary was excellent. Conclusion, good, and your tie back to your brother was good. Just a bit slower. Okay? Good job, Brenda. Thank you. Okay, I guess we don't have time for one more. Do we?
3:43, 7 minutes.
I stopped at 2.
What?
I stopped at 2. So, are we going to do some next week?
Yes, we're meeting next Tuesday at
11:30.
11:30. So we'll get them all done, including the extemp speeches. And I hope you all got my email about your paper due then. Applause, please. Okay, good, yeah.
Oh, I had a question about that. When you said it's 11 to 12 pages, is that 11 to 12 pages including the bibliography, or is that 11 to 12 pages plus the bibliography? So
Either
13.
one.
Okay.
Question, what if we have time conflicts? Like I have final LS4 at the exact same time you want us to meet. Can we come to your debate class?
Yeah, come at 3.
3:30. Oh, well.
3 to 6,
yeah,
3 to 6, yeah.
That's what I meant. Okay.
Or you could come at, can you come at 2:30?
I'll come as soon as I finish.
Yeah, okay, good, okay. All right, so, Ariane and Jason, I will get with you with Loyola, okay?
Is it the same as SLO?
Yeah.
Is it the same style?
Same thing, same dealio. Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
I